Most people approaching retirement, they get told the same thing. You need to get more conservative. And so they do. They shift into bonds. They move money into CDs. They rebalance into something that looks on paper like a safer portfolio. And then they cross their fingers and they hope the math works out. Here's the problem with that. Being more conservative is not the same thing as actually being protected. And for retirees specifically, a portfolio that looks diversified on paper can still be structurally fragile in real life. Today, we're going to talk about what it actually means to de-risk your retirement portfolio. Not just dial back the risk, but address the specific risks that threaten retirement deliberately and by design. Because there is a right way to do this, and most people just are not doing it. For most of your working life, market volatility was uncomfortable, but you could survive it. When the market dropped 30%, you stayed the course, you kept contributing, and eventually the markets recovered. Time was the healer of those market losses. Contributions kept coming in, compounding kept working. Retirement ends that dynamic completely. You're no longer adding to the pile. You are now living off it. And the moment you start taking withdrawals from a portfolio, losses stop being temporary. They become permanent reductions in your ability to generate future income. That is not a small distinction. That is a structural shift in how risk actually works for you. And yet, most retirement advice is still built on accumulation era thinking. Stay balanced, follow a withdrawal rate, hope markets cooperate. That framework was not designed for a 2 to 3 decade distribution phase. It was designed for a world where retirements were much shorter, yields were higher, and people had pensions. That world is largely gone, but the advice has not yet caught up. Here's what most people miss. Retirement risk isn't just market risk. It's not just, hey, what if the market drops? There are actually 6 distinct risks working against a retirement portfolio, and they often compound each other when the portfolio isn't structured correctly. The first one, downside market risk. It's obvious. Markets decline, your portfolio shrinks. But in retirement, the real danger isn't the decline itself. It's that you're forced to sell assets to fund your quality of life while they're down. Those shares are gone. When the market recovers, you're recovering with less. Number 2, sequence of returns risks. And this one surprises people. 2 retirees can earn exactly the same average return over 25 years, but end up with completely different outcomes based entirely on when those bad years hit. If you lose money early in retirement when withdrawals are at full speed and your recovery time is shortest and the math breaks in a way you cannot fix later, that isn't a market problem, it is a structural problem. 3, inflation risk. This is that subtle, slow, ruthless one. Over a 30-year retirement, even moderate inflation cuts purchasing power significantly. The strategy is designed to reduce volatility. Heavy bond allocations, CDs, cash, most of the time they just make inflation worse, not better. Stability without growth is its own kind of risk. Number 4 is your interest rate renewal risk. And this one almost never gets talked about. If your income depends on bonds or CDs that have to be reinvested periodically, you're at the mercy of whatever rates happen to exist at renewal. Rates fall, your income falls. You go from 5% to 4%, you actually lost 20% of your income. And you don't have any say in the timing. Number 5 is geopolitical and economic risk. We know about that right now with Iran. You got wars, policy shifts, debt crisis, tax law changes. These things affect asset values and often quite suddenly, and you cannot predict them. But we can design a portfolio that doesn't fall apart when they happen. Number 6 is longevity risk. This is the one that ties all the others together. The risk of living longer than your money. A 65-year-old couple today has a meaningful probability that at least one of them lives into their 90s. That is a potential 30-year retirement. Every other risk on this list, inflation, market volatility, interest rates, compounds the longer you live. Longevity isn't just a risk on its own, it is a risk multiplier. Here's where traditional planning breaks down. When you have one pool of assets, one portfolio, and you ask it to generate income, absorb market losses, fight inflation, survive interest rate shifts, and last an unknown number of years, you're asking one thing to do 6 different jobs simultaneously, and something always breaks. Stocks give you growth, but they expose you to that sequence risk. Bonds may reduce volatility, but introduce inflation and interest rate risk. Cash gives you liquidity, but guarantees purchasing power erosion. Dividend strategies provide income, but they still leave you vulnerable to market declines. Every tool has a job it's good at, but also a job it's terrible at. The mistake isn't using these tools. The mistake is forcing any one of them to solve every problem at once. Now, there is no single product that can de-risk retirement, but there is a portfolio structure that can. When you stop trying to make one pool of assets do everything and instead assign specific tools to specific jobs, something clicks into place. Now every dollar has that clearly defined role. So, bucket number one is cash. This is your liquidity layer, your emergency cash position, designed for short-term needs, medical events, home repairs, those unexpected things life delivers without warning. Cash is not an investment, it is a stabilizer. Its job is to make sure that nothing in the other two buckets ever gets forced into a bad decision at the wrong time. When we size this correctly, this bucket is protection, not a drag. Bucket number two is our income bucket. This is the engine. It is our lifestyle support. Its job is to convert a portion of your savings into a guaranteed, predictable income that cannot be outlived, regardless of what markets are doing. The primary tool we use here is a fixed indexed annuity with a lifetime income rider. And the reason it works so well is because of what it eliminates. It removes longevity risk, so the income continues for life. Period. It removes sequence of returns risk from your income because your monthly check doesn't come from selling assets. It removes interest rate renewal risk because the income does not reset. And when we structure this appropriately, it can address inflation risk as well with income that grows over time. There's a second benefit to solving income here that most people don't even think about at first. Once your essential income is covered, meaning your lifestyle is funded by guaranteed sources, the pressure on bucket three, the growth bucket, disappears. Your growth assets are finally free to behave like growth assets. There's no forced liquidations during a down market, no existential anxiety every time the market drops. The growth bucket can do its actual job because it's not also being asked to be your paycheck. That's not a small thing. It's fundamentally different as a retirement experience. So let's go there. Bucket number three, long-term equities. Broad, low-cost diversification. This is your inflation fighter, your estate builder, your long-term compounding engine. And it only works properly when it's not being harvested every month to fund your living expenses. When income is solved in bucket two, the growth bucket gets time. And time is what makes growth assets work. Look at what this structure actually does to the 6 retirement risks. Market risk is removed from income. Sequence of returns risk is neutralized. You're not selling into downturns. Longevity risk is solved. We're not estimating anything. Inflation risk is addressed in both the income bucket and the growth bucket. Interest rate renewal risk is eliminated on the income side, and liquidity for geopolitical or personal disruptions sits in bucket one, ready to go. Each risk has a home. No tool is asked to do a job it was not designed for. I want to say something that doesn't always make it into these financial videos, which this isn't just math. The structure matters to how retirement actually feels, because when income is uncertain, right? When every month involves decisions about which account to pull from, whether to wait for markets to recover, should I liquidate now, whether you're spending too much, retirement becomes a management exercise. It becomes vigilance instead of freedom and peace. When income is guaranteed and that plan actually has a structure, that changes. Market volatility becomes background noise instead of a threat. You spend what you plan to spend. You don't second guess every withdrawal. That peace of mind is real. It's measurable. Research consistently shows that retirees with more guaranteed income report higher satisfaction and less financial stress. Not because they have more money, interestingly, but because the money is structured to behave like a retirement plan rather than a pile of assets that they're just slowly dismantling. De-risking a retirement portfolio doesn't mean hiding from markets. It doesn't mean accepting low returns or giving up growth. It means understanding that retirement has specific risks, risks that are different from what you managed during your working years, and designing a plan where each of those risks is addressed intentionally. Not averaged together and hoped away, but addressed. If that framework makes sense to you, and if you've been told to get more conservative and something just felt incomplete about that answer, I'd like to show you what this looks like mapped to your actual numbers. We do a free strategy session, no pressure, no sales pitch. We will look at your income gap, your existing income, your asset structure, and we will build out what an actual income roadmap looks like for your situation. The link to schedule that is below. It takes about 30 minutes, and the clarity is worth a lot more than another afternoon wondering if the math works. Hope this helped. We'll see you in the next video.